Okay, so now we're going to talk about sort of branches of philosophy, or the history of the discipline of philosophy as it has come to be organized throughout Western history. And first, remember that philosophy was the first science. And so universities, which were a creation of the medieval world, the first university was the U of Bologna in Italy, which I believe was created in like 1080 AD. And they were places that tried to deal with all knowledge. That was the whole thing. So they gathered together wise people from all over the place and would house them at a university, right? And a university literally means one, and verse has to do with a speaking of. And so you're speaking of one. So in other words, university literally is a place of universal knowledge. Okay, so what do we mean by universal knowledge? Well, that means all knowledge is, I put an S at the end, because we're talking about all the different types of knowledge. Okay. So if you take all knowledge, this circle delineates all knowledge. So this is everything you can know, possibly. Okay. Now, it's a little bit hard to just start at like everything, right? So we can divide philosophy into various branches or sub-disciplines. And in a modern college or university, there would be courses in each of these things individually. And so we could talk about things like metaphysics, which deals with what is real. So we can say it deals with reality. Turns out that we're not really sure what's real sometimes. We could deal with things like epistemology, which is the study of knowledge or trying to figure out what is true. We could talk about things like logic, which is discovering the science of correct thinking. We could look at ethics, which is discovering how to be good and what is good. We could look at politics or political science as how to govern the whole in a way that's good. We could look at things like aesthetics, which deals with art. What is art? How does it function? That kind of stuff. We could deal with linguistics, which asks the question, what is language? What does it do? How does it work? We could deal with things like philosophy of the mind. And we could say, what is consciousness? CS is consciousness. And there are other branches as well. For our course, we'll probably stick mainly with metaphysics, epistemology, ethics, and politics for the most part. I don't know what happened there. But anyways, what I was saying as I was completing this is, so linguistics and philosophy of the mind have become very important today in dealing with things like artificial intelligence, because it turns out that computer programmers are very good at algorithms and logic, and that's all coding is. It's logic, systems of logic. But they're not very good at understanding what is consciousness. Nor are they really good at creating actual language. Like they can imitate if-then scenarios, but spontaneous language is somewhere in between this. Anyways, whatever. So the point is, we'll be spending more of our time dealing with what is, and that is metaphysics. What is true, and that is epistemology. What is good, and that is ethics. And then what is good for the whole? And what is good for the whole is ultimately politics. And so that's kind of how we're going to be dealing with it. Like I said, there's a lot more stuff that we could look at, but only so much you can do. But so politics, right? When we talk about what is good for the whole, right? So how do you organize all people? Well, first you have to know what good means. So politics is related to ethics. And so ethics tries to decide, well, what is good? Well, good can only depend on what's true. You can't say that something false is good, right? So ethics is dependent upon epistemology. And if we're going to talk about what is true, first you have to know what is. Hence, epistemology is dependent on metaphysics. So anyways, the point is, while philosophy is all knowledge, we have to break up, that all into these various disciplines, yet they're all related at the end of the day. And just sort of like a little analogy, consider this for a minute. Consider, okay, this is a tower, okay, with like little windows and stuff, and then like a little kind of, whatever. And, here, of course, is the ground. Now, suppose there's a little guy right here entering the tower, and from this perspective, our guy can kind of see, this much, right? Because he's only, 6 feet tall. As he moves up, when he's here, he can see more of the countryside. When he's here, he can see more of the countryside. When he's here, he can see more, and you get the point, right? So by the time you get way up here, then you can see, all of this stuff. Okay, so consider this for a second. Consider the road up here as essentially education. And as we're ascending, we're increasing our knowledge. And the more knowledge we have, the more we're able to see how all of these things are kind of related. And so you get kind of a situation in which if all you know of the world is this, and you have no idea about this or this, you have no idea that X and Y are actually related in the big picture. I mean, not only do you not know that Y exists, you don't understand that it's part of a universal whole, right? Because if you have X and you have Y, right? So here's X unto itself, here's Y unto itself. If you understand more knowledge, then you understand a larger reality in which X and Y are aspects of something higher. So multiply that up, and by the time you get way up here, you begin to understand all. You begin to understand the whole, if that kind of makes sense. And so that's the whole point that we're after here, and the branches of philosophy, and they are all related.